Welcome to my one-man panel of madness. Alright, and welcome back to part 2 of Post-Comic-Con 2018. This is Dr. Gio Who. And so last time we talked about Doctor Who and Star Trek Discovery. This time we're going to talk a little bit about Godzilla, Shazam, and Aquaman. So Godzilla, already, as soon as I started seeing the images of the monsters, the classic monsters I grew up with watching Godzilla, I was ecstatic. I really want to see those classic monsters being reborn in this day and age. But it's funny because when you really watch the trailer, you start to ask yourself, who is the real monster here? You know, I have kind of an idea that this story really has to do with someone who is upset about how the world is being treated, the planet is being treated, and they decide to unleash these monsters to destroy humanity so that the Earth can get back to what it was. Now, that's my feeling. That's what I sort of take from the trailer. I think it's a great concept. It'd be cool to see, you know, us as monsters, humans as monsters, and the monsters themselves. So I think it's a pretty cool storyline there, and see how this whole monarch thing plays through, and how the new monsters are introduced, and how they do their big battles. So I am excited for that, and see where it goes, because I actually just want to see the monsters fight. That's like my favorite thing in the Godzilla movies. I know growing up, I used to watch everything from the black and white to the newer ones, even the modern ones like Godzilla 2000. I just love seeing the monsters fight. I love miniatures, so Godzilla movies were perfect to feed my miniature fix. And I like monsters that are pretty much just men in rubber suits. This is why I was also a huge fan of, well, actually I still am a huge fan of the Power Rangers. So yeah, that's what I have for Godzilla. Moving on to Aquaman. Okay, let me just say that Aquaman gave me chills. The trailer just looks awesome. You know, it's almost like Lord of the Rings underwater, you know. So I'm hoping that this movie kind of goes along the same way that Wonder Woman did, where you have an origin story, but it's not so heavy on origin, you know. If you saw Wonder Woman, you know, you see that they talked about the origins of Wonder Woman, but not so heavy that the whole movie was just an origin. You talk a little bit about Diana. You saw how she grew up. Boom. Now she's with Steve Trevor. So I'm hoping that's the same with Aquaman, but the visuals just look amazing. I'm excited because I had an opportunity to watch James Wan working, essentially. And I won't say I won't talk too much about it because this was something secret, but it was cool to watch the man work, and I'm excited to see the actual release of Aquaman. You know, growing up, Aquaman was one of my favorite characters as well. I lived in Puerto Rico for some time, and we had a house right there on the beach, and of course we were always in the water, and we always felt like we were, you know, living in the world of Aquaman. Now, you know, this wasn't like a normal beach. This was like literally a living ocean. You know, there wasn't, you know, tourists or anything like that. You literally went in the water at your own risk, because there were eels, sharks. I mean, whatever you can imagine, there was there. So we always grew up in this environment. I always thought of myself as Aquaman, you know, just without the tights. So I'm excited to see that as well. Again, the visuals look pretty cool. The storyline looks cool. Black Manta, it looks awesome. So I'm really excited to see this story, and I'm glad that it comes out December. So we're not too far away from it. I think we waited enough for the trailer. I'm glad it's out. Now let's just get to December. And Shazam. Okay, so I have a very soft spot for Shazam, Captain Marvel. The reason is, when I was a kid, we lived in Chicago, and the house we were living in was previously owned by my grandparents, and it had the creepy attic and everything. And one time I made myself go up to the attic I love movies like The Goonies, and I always thought that if I went to my attic, I would find a treasure map and I could go on an adventure. Well, my parents never wanted me to go up there because it's dangerous, you know. I guess it wasn't, you know. So I did. I went on my little adventure. I went up in the attic even though I wasn't supposed to, and it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was just a lot of boxes and old stuff. And as I was digging through all these different things looking for a treasure map, I found one of the greatest treasures, and what to me, I recall being that first moment where everybody traces their first geek moment to a specific meeting with an actor or an anime, cartoon, a book. Mine was with a comic book, and that comic book was Shazam. It was an actual 1960s Shazam. I can't remember the title very well. It was very old, but I found a stack of comic books. I also found a Green Lantern and a Tarzan, and I remember just taking them. There were a lot of them, but those are the three that I remember like really obsessed with. And I took them down to my room, and nobody knew that I had found these comic books until my mom found them. And was like, "Where'd you get these?" Yeah, I went up to the attic and I found them. But Shazam was always one of my favorites because it was every kid's dream, you know, to use a magic word and bam, now I'm like Superman. I can fly, you know, I've got these amazing powers. And funny enough, years later, when I was a teenager, Sci-Fi Channel had, I believe it was Sci-Fi Channel, I might be wrong, but they had the Shazam serial. So you can watch the series, you know, they have those little 10-minute episodic, yeah, like a series that they used to have in theaters. And there was one called Captain Marvel, and I actually own that. And it was so cool to see the way that they would use like a dummy. It was pretty much a dummy, a mannequin on a string that they would just fly over these canyons in California to make it seem like he was flying. And so I really, really liked seeing that, and it just brought me back to my childhood. So when they announced that they were making Shazam, I was very excited because that was the comic book that started it all for me. I even had my mom make me a Shazam cape, which I wore all the time because I really wanted to. And I remember as a kid, we would buy sweatpants and sweatshirts getting ready for winter. I always wanted red because if I wore red sweatpants and sweatpants and sweater, then I was Captain Marvel, and all I needed was my white cape. So I'm very excited for this. I mean, it's got such a really good tone to it. It's not, dark, but it just has so much value to it that I think is going to attract a younger fan base, those that maybe were not allowed to watch movies like Justice League, or, the Batman versus Superman because they were too violent, too dark. This is definitely, I think, a good way to start getting younger viewers into the whole DC world. And it's a great story, it's a kid who's a hero at heart, and that's why he gets these powers to fight evil. So I'm very excited for that because, again, I grew up with reading Captain Marvel comic books, and he was my personal hero. And then I discovered Batman, and I was like, oh, I like this guy. But I was growing up, getting older, changing in the mind, so I started getting a little more darker, more into the Dark Knight. And but still, I think for me, Shazam, it just has that special place in my heart that makes me so excited that it's coming to theaters. And I think Levi's going to do a good job. I can't say great yet because I haven't seen the whole thing, but from what I've seen so far, I think it's going to be good. But I got to see it before I can say it's great. So those are my post-Comic-Con 2018 ramblings. And stay tuned because we've got some more rambles coming soon. And so we'll see you next.